Bethy, 19F, stood at the edge of the living room, staring at the faded walls where my childhood had been painted with memories. The same walls that once echoed with laughter, the warmth of my father's stories, and the soft hum of my mother's lullabies, but now? The walls were silent. The house had been mine, in a way. It was the only place that felt like it belonged to me. Until they showed up. My father passed away when I was 12. It was sudden, a car accident, the kind that leaves you with an empty space where someone used to be. My mother was devastated, of course, but she never let it show. She buried her grief beneath layers of strength, as if being strong was the only way to keep us afloat. But after a while, I noticed something strange. She started meeting someone, Mark. At first, I thought it was just a friendship. She'd go out for coffee, come home with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't think much of it until one day, she introduced him to me, like he was someone I was supposed to know. Bethy, this is Mark. He's a friend. I didn't trust him. There was something about him, the way he looked at her, the way his hand lingered on her back just a little too long, but I didn't say anything. A few months later, they got married, and that's when things changed. Mark didn't just marry my mother, he moved in with his son, Jake. Jake was a year older than me. But you'd think he was the king of the house. He acted like he owned the place from the very first day, his cocky grin and arrogant attitude making it clear he thought he was better than me. They didn't ask if I was okay with it, they didn't care, they acted like I was just there. I remember the first time I tried to speak up. This is my house, I said, my voice shaking. Mark just chuckled, ruffling my hair like I was a child. Not anymore, sweetheart, he said, as if that settled the matter. I bit my lip and said nothing. Because what was the point? The day my mother passed away, I thought I'd lose my mind. She was the only person who ever truly cared, the only one who made me feel like I mattered. But when I came home from the hospital, the house felt different. Mark and Jake were there, standing in the living room like it was their right to be. Mark didn't even look sad. Mark didn't even bother to be polite. He didn't offer me a cup of coffee or a comforting word. He just stood at the door, his arms crossed, his expression cold and indifferent. You need to pack your things, he said flatly, as if I was just another tenant whose lease had expired. What? I asked, my voice trembling. The house, he replied, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. It's mine now. You can't stay here anymore. I felt like the floor had cracked open beneath me. What? It's not yours, Jake chimed in, his face devoid of emotion. Mom left everything to us. You're not even in the will. I didn't argue. I didn't know what to say. What was the point? I grabbed my bag, stuffing in a few clothes, my old journal, and a handful of photographs, memories that felt like they belonged to someone else. But before I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. I glanced back at the house, the place that had been my home for as long as I could remember. It looked the same from the outside, but inside, it felt like it belonged to someone else than them. I was about to walk away, but something stopped me. What if there's something I missed? I crept back inside, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The house was eerily quiet, the only sound the faint creak of the wooden floorboards under my feet. I made my way to my mother's old study, the door creaking slightly as I pushed it open. The room was dusty, filled with old papers, books, and the faint scent of lavender, the last trace of her presence. I searched through her desk, her drawers, anything that might have been left behind, and that's when I found it. The envelope, hidden beneath a stack of old magazines. I found an envelope marked for Bethy, if you're reading this. I ripped it open, my hands trembling. Inside was a letter, written in my mother's familiar handwriting. Bethy, it began, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I've left everything to you. The house, the savings, everything I have. But there's more. Please, don't let them take what's yours. They'll try. They always do. I felt a surge of relief and rage all at once. I knew it. Mark and Jake had lied. They had manipulated me, taken advantage of my grief, and tried to steal what was rightfully mine, but I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I shoved the letter into my bag and glanced around one last time. I could hear faint voices from downstairs, Mark and Jake, probably arguing over who got to claim my bedroom. I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them win. I slipped out the back door, heart racing, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I was free. But the fight was far from over. I found a safe place to stay with a friend, and the next day, I went to the police. I showed them the letter, explained what had happened, and told them about the will. The officer listened carefully, his expression shifting from sympathetic to serious. "We'll need to investigate this," he said firmly. I felt a flicker of hope. For the first time since my mother passed, I wasn't alone. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Mark and Jake would fight back, but I wasn't scared. I had proof, and I wasn't going to let them take what was mine. The days blurred together after I filed the police report. I spent my time pacing in my friend's small apartment, staring at the letter from my mother like it was a lifeline, and maybe it was. The police said they'd start an investigation, but how long would it take? Mark and Jake weren't just family, they were manipulators. They knew how to cover their tracks, how to twist the truth to suit their narrative. But I wasn't going to let that happen. 2 days after I filed the report, 2 officers came to visit me. "Bethy, we've got some questions," Officer Martinez said, his tone professional but kind. I sat down, clutching the letter as if it was the only thing grounding me. "We've been looking into your mother's will," Officer Martinez continued. "It's clear there's a dispute. But we'll need more than just this letter to move forward." I nodded, feeling both relieved and anxious. "I have more," I said, pulling out the envelope with the letter and the few documents I'd managed to grab. They examined everything carefully, their faces serious. "This changes things," Martinez said after a long pause. "We'll need to speak with Mark and Jake." A few days later, the police went to Mark and Jake's house. I stayed behind, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. I knew they'd lie. I knew they'd try to manipulate the officers, but I also knew the truth was in the documents. Mark was smug when the officers arrived. "I don't know what this is about," he said, his voice dripping with false innocence. "My wife left everything to me. Bethy's not even in the will." The officers didn't buy it. They presented the documents, my mother's letter, the will, and the evidence I'd gathered. Mark's face twisted with rage as he read the letter. "This is fake," he shouted, slamming the papers down. Jake stood beside him, his face a mask of indifference, but the officers weren't convinced. "We'll need to verify this with the court," Martinez said firmly. "You're both under investigation for fraud and emotional manipulation." When the officers left, Mark was furious. He came to me, his face red with anger. "You think you're smart, huh?" he spat. "You're just a kid. You'll never win this." But his words didn't hurt, they fueled me, because I knew the truth, and the truth was stronger than any lie. Days turned into weeks. The investigation was slow, filled with legal jargon and court dates that made my head spin. But I didn't give up. I kept fighting, not just for the house, but for my mother's memory, for the life that was stolen from me, and slowly, the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. One evening, I received a call from Officer Martinez. "Bethy, we found something," he said, his voice urgent. I rushed to the station, heart pounding. "We found a hidden section in your mother's will," Martinez explained. "It's clear she wanted everything to go to you." I felt like the ground shifted beneath me. I was going to win. The court date arrived. I sat in the courtroom, facing Mark and Jake. Their faces filled with fake smiles and smug confidence, but I had proof. I had my mother's letter, the hidden section of the will, and the support of the police, and when the judge read the verdict, it was like a weight was lifted from my shoulders. "The court finds in favor of Bethy," the judge announced. "The house, the savings, everything her mother left behind belongs to her." Mark's face turned white, Jake's smug grin disappeared, and I knew I'd won. Mark and Jake were charged with fraud and emotional manipulation. They lost everything they tried to steal. But I gained something far more valuable: my voice, my power, and my peace. I sold the house. I didn't need it. But the money helped me start over, to build a life that was mine, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. Update: it had been 2 years since the court case, 2 years of peace. I had carved out a life for myself, filled with quiet mornings, coffee shops that knew my name, and a job that made me feel valued, not for what I had, but for who I was. I was finally free, or so I thought. It came as a text message: "Hey, Bethy. It's Mark. Just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing well." I stared at the screen, disbelief bubbling up like a tidal wave. "Mark," I didn't reply. I didn't even delete the message. I just sat there, staring at it, wondering why, after everything, they thought they could just reach out. A few days later, my phone rang, unknown number. I answered, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and confusion. Bethy, it's me, Jake, the voice said, flat and devoid of any warmth. We were just thinking about you. We miss you. You know, family. I laughed bitterly. Family? I repeated, my voice shaking with rage. You kicked me out of my own house, lied to me, and manipulated me. And now you miss me. Jake didn't say anything, just hung up. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Mark. Dear Bethy, it began, we've been thinking about everything. We realize we were wrong. We'd love to have you back in our lives. Let's start fresh, like a real family. I stared at the letter, my fingers trembling. They wanted to be family again, after everything, after the lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. I couldn't believe it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. One evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Mark and Jake standing there, looking like they'd just walked out of a picture-perfect family photo. Bethy, Mark said, his smile forced, we just wanted to talk. We've been thinking about you. I didn't invite them in. I stood there, arms crossed, heart racing. Why are you here? I asked, my voice sharp. We miss you, Jake said, his expression strangely sincere. We're family. We should be together. I stared at them, disgusted. Family? I spat. You mean the people who threw me out, lied to me, and tried to steal everything that belonged to me? Their smiles faltered, but Mark tried to play it off. We've changed, he said, his voice shaky, but I wasn't convinced. I slammed the door in their faces. I didn't need them. I didn't need the false promises, the empty words. I had built a life for myself, without them, and I wasn't about to let them drag me back into their world of manipulation. Later that night, I sat down and wrote a message to Mark. I don't need a family that doesn't respect me. I don't need people who only reach out when it's convenient for them. I'm not a part of your story anymore. I hit send and didn't look back. It was a late afternoon when I got the call. Bethy, we need you to come down to the station, Officer Martinez said, his tone firm. I didn't ask why. I already knew. Mark and Jake had been arrested for fraud. They were trying to pull the same stunt again, for trying to steal what wasn't theirs, but this wasn't just about the legal charges. It was about facing them one last time. When I arrived at the police station, Mark and Jake were sitting in a small, cold room, hands cuffed, faces pale and defeated. Mark's eyes met mine, his usual arrogance gone. Bethy, he muttered, his voice hollow. Jake just stared, his expression unreadable. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, letting the silence stretch between us. Then I finally spoke. Do you know what the worst part is? I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. Mark blinked, caught off guard. It's not the lies. It's not the betrayal. It's the fact that you thought you could get away with it. I stepped closer, my heart steady. You tried to erase me, steal from me, and manipulate me into thinking I didn't matter. But you know what? I'm not just standing here, I'm walking away with everything. You're the ones who lost. Mark's face twisted with rage. You're nothing without us, he hissed. I smiled. No, Mark. I'm everything because I'm me. I turned to Officer Martinez. I also want to press charges, I said firmly. They have been stalking me and coming unannounced at my property. Martinez nodded. We've got the evidence, Bethy. The court will handle the rest. And just like that, Mark and Jake were taken away. Their faces disappeared behind the door. But I didn't feel a single shred of triumph, just closure. Soon they were sentenced to several years in prison for all of their crimes, and as the judge banged the gavel, I realized something. I walked out of the courtroom with my head held high, not because I had one, but because I had fought. I had faced the ghosts of my past, stood my ground, and refused to be a victim, and that was the greatest victory of all.